It's going to be entitled Bert's policy.
Hey, how are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
It's a guideline.
It's knowing what to buy and when to buy it.
That's true. It's the mysteries of life.
All day job.
All right, at 6:30, I'm going to call the meeting of the Newport Board of Selectmen to order for October 4th, 2021. Would everyone please stand for the pledge of allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Agenda review. Herb, anything? Barry?
All set, thank you.
Keith?
I have nothing.
This afternoon or this morning, at some point today, we got emailed to us the minutes of a retreat on September 28th, and I'd like to pass on those until the next time. 'Cause I'm not.
Didn't it say October 28th?
Yes.
It did. It doesn't anymore.
Exactly.
So let's
Looks familiar.
not do that. And that was all I had. Hunter, anything?
No, sir.
Okay, minutes from previous meeting. Minutes from September 20th, 2019. Do I have a motion on those?
Move to accept.
Second.
Any discussion, changes? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. We have minutes for the non-public session of September 20th, 2021. Do I have a motion on those?
Move to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? All right, consent agenda. On the back of your agenda is the consent agenda for tonight. Do I have a motion on that?
Move to accept.
Is there a second? And we have a second from Herb. Any questions, changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? All right. Open forum. This is the opportunity for any member of the public that wishes to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The public can speak on agenda items when we get to them. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to us tonight? Yes, sir. State your name for the record.
Dick Wenzel, I only have two subjects. Can I pass this up to you?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
And this is a copy of RSA 66:1, licensing of dogs.
What's that?
I am.
This is what the law is, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the law is in effect. They sent out notices to people, they said that owe money, which is wrong and it's illegal. Because this is the law, and prior before May 1 goes to April, you have to send a notice that if you want to free what it says here, then they do it. But it's like you get your license. They send you a notice that your license coming up, registration. This law, you people of the town did not send notices to the people that have dogs. So therefore, you cannot charge them because it was illegal, because they never got a letter that this is in effect. This is the law. It's still in effect, and the notices that were sent, I have a copy of one of them, that they owe so much money for fines and this and that, but you never notify them. And the law is very clear. You have to notify them that this is in effect. The town or the city has to pay for the license and the tax. The town didn't send the notice. So you can't collect that money until you do what the law says.
Okay. And this RSA has been in effect since January 1st, 1998. So it's nothing new, so,
This is the law.
okay.
And
All right.
then when they sent out to collect money, they updated it to do the law. But they never sent notices,
Okay,
and they need a notice. You can have your attorney check it out.
right. And I'm sure our town manager will work with the town clerk and,
Did it already.
all right,
So there's a considerable piece of this statute that's missing. That has not been provided to you.
okay,
The town does not charge for a license or the tag. If you read further on in this particular statute, I forgot whether it's section 3 or 4, the state mandates that the town will charge $4. And another fee, I believe it's $2.50, for basically the process of registering your dog. The tag and the license itself remains free of charge. So the state statute mandates the fee and mandates the circumstances under which it would be assessed.
Are we required to send out notices? Or do we have one, I mean, everywhere you look, you see pay a dog tax. That's why usually each
Yeah, I
state.
can't speak for that particular, I read through it, about a week ago and didn't see any conditioning upon which you.
Right, and I don't see it here.
all right. We will make sure we're in compliance. Anything else?
One more.
Okay,
I believe we have 5 cemeteries. Their budget for 5 cemeteries, we had 2 people. Now I guess we have 1. And the person has a budget of $1,500 to do 5 cemeteries. There's something drastically wrong with that. Now, I believe you have 1 now left. 5 cemeteries for $1,500. The budget doesn't fit.
all right. And that's something we can look at budget time.
So, can we receive an answer relatively soon? Why in the past, it was only $1,500 to do 5 cemeteries with 2 people, now you have 1.
To do exactly what for $1,500?
Mow the
Mow the
lawn,
lawn.
pay pollutant and everything else. And they have 5 cemeteries to do that with. That doesn't even pay for the gas.
I'd have to look at the specific line item. That's part of the buildings and grounds budget. So somehow we seem to be getting it done.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
We typically budget for 3.75 full-time employees in that budget.
Yes.
Buildings and grounds.
mhm,
And we have a number of line items in there for maintenance. For instance, there's a line item in there, I believe this year, for just masonry alone, I believe is $5,000. So I'm not really sure where the $1,500 line item that he's referring to comes from. But you can do the math at 3.75 employees, probably an average of $40,000 apiece. That's certainly more than $1,500. But buildings and grounds are often commingled together, so we have to read the budget to see the breakout.
mhm.
Are we down to just one person?
At the present time, yes.
And we're interviewing for others?
Yes.
And we have highway filling in
Yes.
and assisting as needed.
necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, getting back to your licensing of dogs, you provided us with 466:1, but 466:4 talks about fees, and it's, there's a fair amount to it, so,
Yeah, I have that copy too.
yeah.
Except, this is the law, and they try to help by coming up with some of this, but they have to do it first. The first item is, the town has to notify them,
Mhm.
and it says clearly right in here.
Yep.
It'll be paid for by the town or the city at their expense. So, you can't have your way both ways. That's the law.
Right.
It's still there and it's still in effect.
I don't think we've been sending notices out postage due. So we have been paying to notify people. Or you're saying we're not notifying people?
you are not notifying them that they can come in here between May 1 and April 30th, and the town has to pay for the license and the tags. You don't notify them of that. Just, just think if you didn't have your license or anything else. Because the law is clear, you have to notify them if they want a free tag and license. They have this to do it, but you guys don't do it.
Okay.
And by not doing it, you shouldn't be collecting no dog fees. And one more that everybody wants to know is, what do you do when you do collect the money? Dog tax, what do you do with it? I heard what you did with it, but I'd like the public to know what you do with it.
To go in the general fund.
You
Goes in the general fund.
You mentioned that we don't charge for license, but 466:4, the fee for every license for a year or portion thereof shall be $4.50 for dogs at least 4 months old but less than 7 months old, and it goes on from there, whether your dog's sprayed or neutered or not. So pretty much 466:4 says the fee is for the license. So the licenses are not given out.
Well, if
They're
you want to
pay-
violate the law, then make sure your lawyer tells you that's the law and that's what it has to be.
Yeah, this is the law too,
Law
so
too.
there you go. That's the way the government works. So
So when might we have an answer? By May.
the answer you're looking for is what?
Are you doing it legal? No, but have a lawyer put it so we
Well-
can see it.
Town manager is on it, and he can provide a response to you.
Well, the public has a right to know, and this has already been checked out. So, we have plenty of money, because everybody does is go to lawyers. We're up to $1.5 million right now, and it's just going way over that. But that's law.
Right, I think this is something the municipal association can handle with a phone call for us.
I think it'd be a good idea,
Yeah.
but that's law for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bert, do you want to register a dog tonight?
No, quite frankly. This is kind of like the law that we put in on the overweight trucks. Okay? It is nonsensical as it is done. My truck being unloaded
Yeah.
got the ticket when Todd Fratzel's truck severely loaded didn't, in that example what I gave. So if we remember that and you pass that ordinance as it was and it stands. All right, how does the town find out who has dogs?
I think if you've already registered a dog, that's kind of the only way that they get
Part of it's an honor system.
Yeah.
Also, if you get a rabies shot, like you go to the vet or something,
Bird on the
they
dog.
have to know.
All right, so prior registration,
Right.
okay, possible rabies shot, we get 3 opinions here. But there's one clear one. You take your animal to a vet, and they notify the state.
I
Or the
didn't know.
town.
So now a lot of people do not take their animals to vets when they should go.
Right.
Because they aren't registering them and don't want to register them. So there it becomes a detriment, a medical one for the animal. Because you aren't responsible for finding out who it is. The responsibility has been put on the veterinarians to report it.
I didn't know
So, that being said, it's a flaw. There are people who allow their dogs to run free. We know that. We see it regularly. And then there are people whose dogs never run free.
that. Yeah, like mine.
Excuse me?
Like mine, never runs free.
Well, yes. So that being said, there are problems with it, in my opinion. And I think that you have the responsibility, meaning the town, to figure out where the dogs are and to get them licensed. That could be a daunting task.
Yes, it could.
Once upon a time, it's been a while, but we used to get a list brought to us around mid-April from the town clerk that would list like all the dogs that had not been registered yet. that had been registered or they thought should be registered. And some of those dogs had died or people had moved, and I believe at the time there was one selectman who was on that list too. It wasn't me, it was a different one. But, so,
How long ago was that?
quite a while.
1990s probably,
No, not that late.
not that
It's
late.
more recent.
All right,
Person I'm thinking of is the county commissioner now.
oh,
So, whenever that was.
okay, I guess I will jump on board there and confess that it could have been me, because I could have made that statement. A long time I have thought that this was done absolutely unequivocally wrong.
Right. But I think at the time the selectman in question looked to see if he was on the list and found he was and made a comment about it, so.
One other comment, because there are quite a few on that list. You have your dog award each year.
Mhm.
And each year, Lee has told us how many people are not, that she knows are not. Never mind the one, not, who was it that said, Rumsfeld that said, it's the knowns that you don't know and not, all that stuff. You remember that?
Yeah.
So there's, the acquisition of information should happen first before you charge anybody for anything, because it ought to be a tax for the animal's health and well-being that happens through
Mhm.
everybody.
Yeah.
No.
It's a fee, not a tax. We don't tax in this state.
Yes, Jerry, I know. And it won't cost us any money, but we can, 3.6 billion, trillion, excuse me, I don't want to speak. So if we do this fairly, we need to figure out where the dogs are, who has the dogs, and everyone has to be treated fairly. And I believe it was better than 1,000 in this community last time.
They didn't pay that
Right.
fee?
I don't know what it was, but
Wow.
personally I liked, well actually it's my daughter's dog, but I like the fact my daughter's dog is licensed, because that way if he does get away, there's some way to track him down.
Yes. I am not saying it doesn't have good benefits, I'm saying that it's not equal.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, anything else for open forum? Yes, and state your name, since I didn't ask you before, just so we make sure we
Elmer
get it
Fudd,
right.
we've been through this before.
Yes.
It's not a statutory requirement.
Right, but just in case the people watching at home want to
I want to talk about
know.
the forum itself.
What's that?
I want to talk about the forum itself,
Which forum?
this forum,
Okay,
and the positive effects on the community.
we're allowing too much time?
Be quiet, it's my turn to speak. No, just the opposite. I have no problem pointing out squeaky wheels. No problem about kicking somebody's butt if it needs kicking. You know that. And I have a constitutional right to do that in this country. You allow it to happen. And that has removed a lot of turbulence. All you need to do is look at the school board as it is now. I bring now to it lots of turbulence. Why? Because they want to limit me from speaking. They want to put out an aura of the Waltons, the Brady Bunch. Everything is going fine. You can't say anything bad about anybody, when in fact, you would be surprised how bad the paper system still is, Jeff. From the days when we were there, very little seems to have changed. It's lackadaisical at best. Their ethics policy is constitutional garbage. It's not enforceable. They can't do it. And they know it. And the ACLU did an opinion that they gave to Timberland School District. It was very clear that they couldn't. But yet the New Hampshire School Board Association sends it out to all schools to do it. That they can ask people to actually, under Article 7, to acquiesce to the majority. Wait a minute.
And is that your opinion to the majority?
Yes.
Okay.
To follow suit. Those aren't the exact words used, but it's the effect.
It sort of defeats the whole purpose of a diverse board.
Well, U.S. Supreme Court has dissenting opinions.
Yeah.
Why do they do that? I should think everybody would follow the majority. That is not it. The whole idea of free speech is to say the things you do not want heard. You do not want to hear what Dick might have said tonight about the dogs. So therefore you limit it? No. It is to protect that very speech that you do not want to hear. And that is what Article 7 does. And I have no intentions of ever signing it. I have no intentions of allowing it to stay on the school board policy as is.
That's Article 7 of the school board ethics policy?
Yes.
Okay.
And what it says is you must essentially follow the majority. And to you, I believe, you understand how unlawful that is. Now, it's not a requirement, it's a request. But the intimidation to get you to do it is what we are up against now. So that all being said, this forum has done away with a lot of turbulence that you might have had from at least one person in the audience had you followed their suit.
Oh, I don't know.
Jeff, you and I have been here a
Just
long
agree
time.
with him, Jeff, he's right.
All right, anything else?
No.
No. Anyone else for open forum? Okay, moving on. Communication from the Board of Selectmen. Keith, anything?
I have nothing.
Barry?
Well, I did have, I don't want to say a lot of people, I had 2 people comment to me this week on what a wonderful job. They were being facetious, by the way. They couldn't figure out what we had done on Sunapee Street in terms of tarring that area, and thought it must be a joke or something of that nature. And I had to let them know it was the state. That's not us. And apparently we're taking heat, so anybody listening or Zooming or whatever, it's the state that did that.
Yeah, we have to clarify that the paving work here on Main Street, the work on Sunapee Street, and I haven't been out there, but Unity Road also, that was all done by the state of New Hampshire and their DOT.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not the town of Newport doing that.
That's what I just said.
Right. And it's important to make that point. If someone
Yep.
wants to see how we have streets paved, look at Barton, Whitney, and Blueberry Ridge and
Yeah.
all that. That's,
Yeah. But I did want to let people know it wasn't us.
that's an important point. Anything else?
No, no, sir, thank you.
Okay. John, anything?
I thought the fireworks thing was pretty good. I did get a couple of emails from folks that thought it was a little, that it went on a little too long for both days. But nobody was too worked up about it. They just said, hey, maybe next year if we could condense it a little bit would be great, just so that it wasn't, obviously it's not our event anyways, but that was just some feedback. I think it was extremely well attended. I really appreciated there was a handout that had all sorts of information with a little map and some details about the airport. Was nice for everybody who went down to learn a little bit about the facility. But other than that, that's what I got. I thought it was great.
Herb?
I'm all set.
And I'm all set.
Question?
Yes.
Question for John. When you say it was too long, did the program last too long or did it go too late into the evening?
I think at about 5 o'clock you started hearing
Boom.
really loud noises, and every few minutes for 4 or 5 hours. It was just,
So it's
if it
drawn
started at 6 and went until 8:30, okay. But I think it was, people's dogs and car alarms started going off in the development close by for, starting at 5, because there was a lot of testing going on. And people started showing up when the gates opened at 5. I think they were trying to keep people interested. Just the length of it was.
Drawn out.
And just to clarify, this wasn't a fireworks display put on for the benefit of the spectators. It was basically like a trade show for the fireworks industry in New Hampshire. And they were basically showing off to their peers in the business.
Yep.
So.
Good.
Fried dough price was a little high too, I thought, but other than that, it was pretty good.
I don't know how successful I'll be with fixing that.
Yeah. And you were one of the sponsors, what I read.
There was a couple
For your
of
business.
sponsors that, it was good.
Okay. All right, Hunter, anything?
No, thank you.
All right. Moving on. Informational. Newport Ash Landfill, Econ, with Attorney Bruce Jasper here on behalf of Econ. And I guess this has come up because over the past several years, Newport has been, I guess, paying for the, maintenance out at the ash landfill, the monitoring of the wells and all. And the town had neglected to charge Econ for it for several years. So Econ has pretty much run up a bill of about $172,000 for about 5 years worth of monitoring and all that the town has paid for out at the ash landfill. And traditionally, when Econ took over the ash landfill, and correct me if I get this wrong, the state of New Hampshire's position was that Econ needs to set aside sufficient funds in order to provide monitoring of the ash out of the ash landfill for the remainder of the 30-year period they were in, and it was about 25 years at the time, if I remember right. And the state said the trust that was set up by the 27 communities that contributed to that ash landfill was sufficient to take it out to the end of that 30-year period. And then and actually there was a letter from the, I guess, director or commissioner of environmental services at that time said, this is all Econ needs, you guys are set, you've got the money, good to go, enjoy yourselves. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I believe it was, about the same time, and up until that point, Newport would submit bills, I guess, to Econ. Econ would submit to DES, and then the funds would come out of this trust fund to basically pay back Newport.
Right.
And then about 5 years ago, the then powers that be at Department of Environmental Services said, Econ, it's not a single 30-year period which you're running down. You have to maintain a trust fund that is a rolling 30 years, and since you don't have 30 years worth in the bank right now, or in the trust fund, we're not going to let you take any money out of it until you build up what's sufficient to maintain 30 years of monitoring. Is that pretty much correct?
That's pretty much correct.
And during this time, I guess, we were negligent in not sending bills in a timely fashion to Econ or such. Is that also correct?
Well, I guess from our standpoint, not knowing, and I think the board didn't know
Which
whether or
board?
not the bills
Econ
were
board
being
or
paid.
our board?
I'm sorry, the Econ board
Okay.
didn't know, as we understood it, the bills were coming into Econ at 15 Sunapee Street. And at that time, Paul Brown was president in 2016 till 2021. Hunter was the president of Econ. So I don't think we knew that those bills weren't getting paid. And when we get this, well, I guess near the last time it was going to be, we were going to be getting this bill, is when we found out that we really couldn't take any money out of that trust fund anymore, as we had been, I think, up until 2014, or maybe even 2015, when the state said, no, it's a rolling 30 years. So the fact that you had $175,000 in this trust fund to cover the next 17 years of the 30 years doesn't mean anything anymore. And like you say, they were short. So yeah, I think the issue was not knowing that the bills weren't paid and getting $172,000 and saying, okay, it's due. Econ agrees that it's due. It's just a question of when it got paid. Now, I think there was some discussion, I think with Hunter, when we got the bill in June, although I know that I guess maybe we did, but the date on the bill is June 30th of this year. There was a discussion about, yes, we thought we would be able to pay it, or we just pay it in 90 days. The reason we wanted to wait for the 90 days is we were in discussions with the Department of Environmental Services and with the Attorney General's office, trying to come up with a plan so that Econ would be allowed to actually take that $172,000 out of the trust fund to pay the town. Now, that process is still going on. The 90 days have gone by. Hunter said, hey, where's the $172,000? I talked to the 4 of the selectmen here. They don't understand why Econ's not paying this bill. So we thought, well, maybe we need to come and explain what Econ is, what the relationship between Econ and the town of Newport is, just so it's clear. And again, Econ, so the Economic Corporation of Newport, was set up in 1991. And it was set up by the then 5 selectmen. So the incorporators of Econ at that time were the 5 selectmen, one of which is sitting in front of me, Mr. Spalding. So, and the whole purpose of Econ was to help in the development of the town of Newport. And we have, I think, worked, and I say we, I mean, I didn't come on the board until 2016. But there are a number of members, including Mark Pitkin, Terry Dorr, who's sitting behind me, Bob Collins, who have been on the board for years and years and years. Kate Leopold is here too. She's a current board member. Right now I'm the vice president. Terry is the treasurer. Dick Bates is the secretary. And, well, I mean, for whatever it's worth, I have the names of the other directors right now. But I think we're all concerned that, yes, we know it's owed. We want to see if we can get that money from the state, from the trust, by working out an agreement, and not have to deplete Econ's funds. Because the concern is that we pay $172,000, which Econ has, and it could pay it. But then having the state say, oh, no, we're only going to pay existing bills. That bill is paid, so you don't get that $172,000 out of the trust. The other thing that's going on, and I have an outline, but I'm just jumping all around. The other thing that's going on is on September 3rd, because of this, the $172,000 and not being able to get out of the trust, Econ set up a meeting, and Senator Ward, Skip Rollins, and Joe Kenny from the Executive Council all attended that meeting. I think it was that important. And as a result of that meeting, Senator Ward and Representative Rollins sponsored a bill which they put in about, I would say 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I don't know whether you have the wording on that or not, but basically it's asking the state to take funds from the state and put into the Econ Trust. Econ is the only entity in the state, only nonprofit, that owns a landfill. Most of them are owned by towns, which don't have to put up any financial assurance. Econ is the nonprofit, so we are the one entity that owns a landfill that has to put up a financial insurance to make sure that there's enough money to cover 30 years of closure. And like you say, a rolling 30 years, it's not 30 years anymore. ultimately, what we're looking for, I guess, is both because of the DES and the potential bill, whether or not those fly doesn't make any difference in terms of what whether econ owns that bill. We know we owe it. Like I said, what we're trying to do is buy enough time, and it's obviously gone beyond the 90 days now, to try to work something out with DES, or to have that bill passed in the legislature so that econ doesn't have to draw down funds that they may not be able to get reimbursed for. And right now, I mean, say, well, okay, when? I guess ideally, we'd probably be looking for June 30th, because that's the end of the legislative session. We're working with DES right now, and they've submitted a letter to econ, a consent decree saying you violated this because you violated the rules because you don't have enough in the trust fund, and you haven't been submitting bills, which you're supposed to do at least every 3 years, to DES, showing what that closure cost is. The last time that one of those was submitted was 2016. So it should have been done in 2019. Econ didn't do it in 2019. So econ is in violation of those rules. But DES and the Attorney General's office has kind of bent over backwards to try to work with econ and our situation to try to come up with some kind of a solution so that econ signs an agreement. Yes, we messed up. Yes, we didn't do this. But here's our plan for replenishing that trust fund. And based on that, DES says, if you can do that and it looks like a good plan, we'll give you the $172,000 out of that trust.
Do you have a plan?
Well, no,
You're
because
working on
we just got the consent
Okay.
decree 10 days ago.
Okay.
And we're supposed to be doing it they want it within 90 days.
A couple other points. You mentioned you didn't submit a bill in 2019. As I understand it, the town did not submit a bill to you in 2019, so you had nothing to submit, if I'm correct there. Or Paul,
Right,
You
Well-
did submit a bill?
The bill was submitted June 11th, 2019 for $113,000. DES would not pay it because they weren't going to release funds.
So DES did have a bill, but so it sounds like you may have been under the 3-year limit or within it. And also, that meeting in September you mentioned, I mean, I was there,
Yep.
Hunter was there.
Yep.
Herb, were you there, that one? And it became apparent at that meeting, because there was a representative from DES there and from Department of Justice there, that, and Mark Pitkin, basically, I think he read the letter from the commissioner of DES from back when this all started, and it pretty much, was like, on the good faith and will of the state of New Hampshire, this is all you have to do, and now they're changing. Now they came back later and changed the rules. So some of the bending over backwards to accommodate econ is, because, they're changing the rules midstream.
Well, the Department of Justice is saying, no, we didn't change it. You just interpreted it wrong. And apparently so did the commissioner.
Right.
But there was some language in there that said subject to change, which, otherwise we'd probably just go back to the state and say, hey, look, it's 30 years. Here's your letter. You said 30 years. But they got some little magic language in there.
And just to be clear, there's the money that's in the trust to be used for monitoring of the ash landfill, which is supposed to be kept 30 years worth of money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a separate operating fund econ has, which a lot of that came from the sale of the Eagle Block, which was a very successful project Econ did to basically resurrect that from
Yep.
a burned out shell and turned it into a viable, commercial property right now. And as you said, Econ has the money to pay the town back, but that would come out of the operating capital, which would then eliminate that amount of money to be able to be turned around and reinvested in the community.
Right.
So,
So again, we're not, we're not saying we're not gonna pay it, it's not contingent on anything. But what we're trying to avoid, or you just wanna know, I guess, that if we pay this, that we'll get reimbursed from the trust fund or from that legislation. And we don't know the answer to that, so what we prefer to do is to, if we could, and ask the town to wait a little bit longer, I don't want to say a little bit longer, it may be till the end of June, to find out whether or not if we pay it directly, will we get reimbursed?
yeah.
Or will there be money in the fund that we can take out, then we won't have to worry about it?
Right. And, I was talking with Mark Pitkin Friday, and he said, going forward, he and Econ have negotiated better pricing for monitoring and a lot of the services out there. So you have basically been working to reduce the cost of monitoring and maintaining the ash landfill and such. So, and you are getting revenue from the town. We contribute, I think, $15,000 a year toward Econ, which we have been for quite a while. We're also contributing another $5,000 or so for use of the shooting range out there for the program the rec department is doing. So it's probably about almost half of what you need for an annual maintenance up there.
Yeah, and again, those figures that we need, and it was not the bill that didn't get sent into the state in 2016. It was the amount of the closure cost
Yeah.
for a rolling 30 years.
Yeah.
Or it did get sent in 2016, but not in 2019.
Right.
So if we can get the cost of the maintenance and monitoring of the landfill down, if we could get it down to $20,000, I mean, or $25,000, I mean, that's $750,000, which we have.
Mhm.
So that's another possibility. But even at that rate, if it's $750,000, that's what we got in there. So we still wouldn't be able to take anything out without this consent agreement or the legislative fix.
Right. And as I mentioned at that meeting in September, one option is, since the state changed the rules on the ash landfill, all the towns that contributed to it, that thought they put in enough back whenever, Econ, my feeling is, can go back to them and said, we're all on the hook more, we need each of you to ante up X amount of dollars, so we build up the trust to the level where the state requires it right now.
And that might work, but there might be, of the 27 towns, who knows, there may be 20 of them that said, no way, take us to court. And, we don't don't want to do that, and we can't afford it.
I think with pollution, that's a losing proposition for the towns in the
Yeah.
end.
Well, and it may be, but if it costs us money, it costs Econ money to try to get money.
Hunter?
Mr. Chair, the only question that exists in my mind today, as it has for the last few weeks, is that I think it's laudable that Econ is pursuing some of these options. But as laudable as they are, they remain speculative. The process of getting legislation passed is a daunting one. The prospects of getting legislation that has money associated with it is even more of a challenge. Working out an MOU with the Department of Justice is a process. It's foreseeable, in my mind anyway, that the MOU might actually have a passage in it at some point that might actually speak to this issue and allow the disbursement of the 172 and change. But be that as it may, as has been presented, it remains an expense of Econ, and I think all we need to know and all we have sought is okay, by such and such a date, we will, regardless of how these other enterprises work out, these other efforts work out, the bill will be paid. That's all we've ever sought. And I'd love to hear that, whether it's, the end of the legislative session or 6 months from now, or whatever the case may be. But I don't think it's appropriate for the final ultimate payment to be conditioned on passage of this piece of legislation or an acceptable DOJ commitment. After you've played all those things out, at some point,
Right.
it has to be resolved.
But I didn't hear that. I didn't hear him say that was conditional. I heard you say, we
Specifically.
want to move to this, but if it doesn't happen, you know you owe the bill and you're going to pay it.
That's right.
I didn't hear that.
No, I did, and it's, and I had that in my discussion with Mark, they owe the bill, they realize that the preference would be to take it out of the trust so it doesn't dilute the available capital to reinvest in the community.
So may I ask a point of clarification? So if the legislation that is pending before this state is not successful, and if Econ is unable to come to a resolution and a satisfactory MOU with the state that releases these funds, at what point will that come to an end, and at that moment will Econ pay the bill?
My sense in talking with people is that if that's all exhausted, you're going to pay the bill.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
If he's representing Econ, if he wants to say that,
Yeah.
that would be wonderful.
That's what I've heard, that you're going to, regardless, I mean, if you need some time to have this exhausted and see what you can do. I do like your idea, Jeff.
Right.
Send the money out to the town, but
I mean, that's.
you don't have to go. Maybe some towns will just say, okay. Others might say, we'll take it to court. Well, okay. But anyway, I'm hearing you want time to exhaust, okay? And we need to work together. We're both town entities that need to work together. And I firmly believe that June 30th would be a date that marks the end of your ability to do something. And if nothing's done by that date, we do need the money.
Yeah, and we may well be able to work it out with
Yeah.
DES before that,
Yeah.
and that's fine. As soon as that's done, we can pay it. But if in fact we need to wait for the legislative fix, the legislature is great at passing things, as they get right down to the deadline. Their fiscal year, like the town's ends on June 30th, so I'm assuming that it's got to be done by June 30th.
Okay, so we can agree, June 30th, it would be the mark of the deadline, and after that, we can expect payment.
Yeah.
If nothing
Unless-
takes place before then.
Unless everything collapses before then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bruce, do you have a bill number
Do I have a bill number?
that
For
they
the
introduced a bill? Was it introduced in the House or
I
Senate?
don't have the bill. I have the wording,
Okay.
and Mark had printed it out, or actually put in the wording.
Okay, but you don't have an actual bill
I
number?
don't have the bill number.
My understanding as of today is that bill has not been written in its final
Okay.
form, nor given a bill.
Okay.
And that'll
Yeah.
take time.
I think-
See, one concern I
It's
have
It's almost
with this
900
is,
bills pending.
we're letting, quote unquote, letting Econ slide on what is owed the town, and I wouldn't want it to be considered a precedence. And other people say, well, if Econ can do it, I can do it, or I should be able to do it. And I don't want us to slide that way.
Well, and certainly, that's a valid point. You don't want that. But in the meantime, Econ's going to be putting money back into the town. And again, we're a nonprofit. We're not saying we're not paying it. So it's just a question of when. And I think again, June 30th it would be the drop dead date. That certainly could be done before that. But
I have a question.
Yep.
Paul stated that billing went out in 2019 for the 3-year period. And here we are, 2021, 2 years later. Nothing's been done during that period?
no, and I don't know. Well, I guess a lot of us didn't know what was and wasn't going on. When Mark took over as president, like kind of the interim president on June 1st when Hunter resigned. And then when Mark got elected on June 11th, he started contacting DES and the Department of Justice right away. And frankly, he's been spending a lot of time, I'm glad it's him and not me, working with legislators and DES and Department of Justice, and as well as setting up these meetings. So,
But that didn't happen until we sent another request for payment, correct?
right, and I think that's when it came to, well, again, I didn't come on into the executive council till June 11th, and boy, I've had a major rush here in getting caught up with what's going on. Mark has been on the executive council for 25 years. Terry has. Hunter was on for 5 years. Paul was on for 2 or 3 years before that.
Bruce, can you define executive council? Because it's not in the bylaws.
No, yeah, no. It's the officers. So,
Okay, which would be the president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary.
Secretary, right.
Okay, and that's what is sort of like an unofficial executive council.
Yeah.
Okay. Herb, are you good?
So far. So, if I can add a lack of, I was going to say some clarity, but it's hard to clarify the process here. And Paul has been associated with Econ for many, many years,
Yeah.
so he could give perhaps some better, more accurate historical representation. But as I look back on this, and kind of as it evolved and came to our knowledge that what was happening, is that the town, I'll use that somewhat loosely, functioned as the administrative or financial administrator for Econ. And looking back don't hold me to these numbers, but on this order of magnitude, some 5 or so years ago, the town was submitting bills to the program, and it was becoming reimbursed on a fairly regular basis. Paul can correct me if I'm wrong, but his explanation to me, as I recall it, was that he, at one point, 5-ish or so years ago, submitted a bill, didn't hear anything, rang the state, said, what's going on? They said, oh, well, we'll get back to you, which is a really bad thing when you're dealing with the state. When they tell you they're going to get back to you, I don't know how
Checks in the mail.
Yeah, you don't know how long that's going to be. So, and then the next year he submitted a bill and called them and said, hey, this is like what's going on. And, well, we'll get back to you. And I think that was about the time when this change in the policy started to emerge. I remember 30 some odd years ago when I was here, the trusts were set up for a fixed 30-year period, which requires X number of dollars. And the amount generated from that trust was sufficient, in this case, I'll just speak to this case, but it was intended, and it was in this case sufficient to pay that fixed 30-year cost. And somewhere around the 5 years or so ago, when all of a sudden payments started to either slow down or not show up at all, or met with "I'll get back to you" kind of thing, is about the time I can see the state starting to say, well, we're going to change the rules here, and we're going to require people to, well, it's our perception. Some of them claim that the rule was never changed. We claim that it was. I have very clear recollections that it was a fixed 30-year, because the idea was that at the end of 30 years, everything in the landfill would be inert. So it would represent no further environmental hazard. Well, you get about 17 or 20 years into it, which is where we are, and all of a sudden they realize, well, that's not going to happen. So there was a reinterpretation, a rewriting, whatever you want to call it, of the policy, and they changed it from a fixed 30-year period to a rolling 30-year period, which requires an entirely different number to fund in perpetuity, a much bigger number. Let's call it 50% bigger. And at that point, Econ's trust had been depleted for, Paul, 17 years, 15 years? So the bills were being paid, and the expenses were incurred and being paid on a regular basis, hence the diminishing balance of the trust. And all of a sudden, kind of without no one calling and saying, oh, by the way, you don't have to call us anymore because you're not getting any reimbursements. Because we've changed the way we're doing things, we've changed the policy. So it was kind of a little bit of a backdoor kind of sucker punch, in my opinion, of the state not putting everybody on notice that this is a new interpretation or a new application, and giving everybody fair warning. So it just kind of emerged over the last 3 to 5 years. So, you know, I don't envy, you know, the position we collectively are in. You know, I think there are a couple of different options that we've already touched on tonight. And if Econ is committed to, you know, making this payment by the 30th, end of June, that works for us because we can give notice to our auditors as to what to expect and put it in our financial records and all that sort of stuff. So we're perfectly content with that proposal.
I've got a couple people in the audience, but I want to get to the board members first. John, you're our rep to Econ.
Yeah.
Been kind of quiet this evening.
Two hats, right?
Yeah, I think I agree with, I guess, both sides, since I'm wearing both hats.
Can't do that.
No, I don't think there's any, you know, there's no malfeasance or anybody's trying to pull the wool over on anybody here. It's, you know, two different groups dealing with a situation that, you know, has gone on for far too long, and, you know, I think, you know, Mark is doing his job as the, you know, he has a financial and fiduciary responsibility of Econ, and saying, hey, I think the most prudent thing to do is delay this as long as we can, but, you know, putting the town first, we know we're going to pay it one way or another, and Hunter, you know, puts his, you know, responsible town authority hat on and says, yeah, okay, stop moving the goalpost here. You know, originally it was 30 days, now it's 90 days, now we're talking almost a year. Okay, it's time to get together and say, here's the date, drop dead date. This is taxpayer money here that needs to be reimbursed no matter what. And if that's June 30th, I'm okay with that idea, but I can't sit on either board and say this can just go on forever without some sort of, this is the line in the sand that will not be crossed. And I think that's...
Perhaps we
I'm
need a
all over that.
memorandum of understanding between Econ and the town on payment.
And
Keith,
as long as,
like that,
sorry, one more
Good
thing.
idea.
As long as that doesn't, you know, I'd have to defer to Paul or Hunter, as long as that doesn't change anything for us. You know, you already mentioned that as far as audit goes, you know, as long as we are squeaky clean on, you know, do you guys actually have this money? Where is it? Are you promised it? And how tight is that promise? You know, I'm okay with that as long as there's not anything, you know, backdoor handshakes going on of, you know, yeah, we'll pay you. Okay, when and how?
Keith, any input?
Yeah, I just like the idea of having an absolute date. And if it's
Yeah.
June 30th, then it's June 30th.
Not to play with days, but I don't know if it makes any difference to the town whether it's June 30th or July 1st.
Yes, it does.
June 30th.
It would be the end of the
30th, yeah.
fiscal year. July 1st is the start
Right.
of the new year.
So do you would
So-
want the money
June
in
30th.
this?
In this financial year.
Going into next year, okay.
Yeah.
We're sure. I just want to make sure. Didn't make any difference to Econ, I don't think. I just didn't know if it made
Yeah.
a difference to the town.
Unlike most towns, we're on a July 1st financial
Yep.
year. Mr. Spalding, you had a hand up first.
Okay, I got 7 things. I'm going to do them backwards. I'm going to start with 7 and work backwards. The state, what's the motive? The motive is, when it was done, 30 years was great. As Hunter said, probably it would become not a problem. But now we've become more environmentally conscious. And so the state now looks at this 30-year window and says it ain't enough. This could be a big deal later on. So I believe that's the motivation for them to come forward and say it's rolling. 6, going to the towns buying in. Let's go back to the beginning. They wanted to buy in. They wanted no part of this long-term liability. They wanted out. That's why they bought in. So that same change of thinking that the state is going through it's also in their minds. All you gotta do is bring it to their attention. Say, wait a minute now. The deal we made back then was on knowledge that we had then, not on the knowledge that we have now and the liability. And you are still liable. You gave away your liability in a contract, but you gave it away based on this premise, not the current one. So I believe that if they are smart, they will contribute. That's number 6. Now going to number 5, which is the other towns, and asking them now, they need to be asked in the right tone, the same tone the state is holding. That in fact, environmentally consciousness has changed. And so thus, we've got to fund. I'll leave 4 alone. I'll leave 3 alone. And I'll leave 2 alone. But I gotta say this about the legislature. Here you are, little old Newport, coming out saying, hey, state, we want you to come in and bail us out here. All right. How many senators are gonna vote for that? They all have their own wants and needs. And it's gotta be more wide-based. Look at education. They won't pay for education. And it affects many of them. This is gonna affect only one. Chances of that going, it's an exercise in futility. This is, it's a waste of time, in my opinion. So that takes care of all 7.
All right. Yes, state your name in the back.
John Lennon. I've been up to my neck in closing the landfill, as many long-term people might remember. And one of the things, agreeing with Hunter, that the 30 years was a 30 solid years. It was not a rolling issue. That's why the town agreed to this. But I think that the towns at the time, being involved with all of it, also knew that we may be coming back because of these kinds of issues, changing in environmental laws. There may be leaks, there could be other things that had happened. And so I think it's appropriate to approach the other towns at this point and find out what, test the waters of the towns in New Hampshire and Vermont to see, a lot of those people are still around, obviously. And if we can connect with them, they may be amenable to sharing and getting engaged in this again to help us out.
All right, thank you. And certainly, at least on the New Hampshire side, a lot of those towns have a calendar year budget, so they're preparing their budgets now. So, Bert?
One additional point. Econ is really Newport.
Econ is what?
Econ is really Newport. Why did we create it? We created it for this purpose. To do the ash landfill as being us, but not us. Shell game, maybe, but it was lawful, legal, and a good idea, and still is a good idea. It is another board, other than you, looking at those issues in that money. And so, nothing wrong with it, but just the doing of it, why it was done, but it's still us. It's the right hand saying, I don't belong to the body, with the left hand. No, they're both the same.
Right. But if I recall, it was one thing Econ is, it's a vehicle which can, say, obtain property a lot quicker than the town can, as the town, such as the Eagle Block. It made that work.
That's right.
As a nonprofit, they were able to do that and preserve that. And I guess a few other properties they currently own right now, they probably have preserved from having taken down. And at some point, maybe they'll sell those properties too. So. Yes.
So I don't like unclosed loops. If you are considering, and that's up to Econ at this point, that you're going to go back to the towns, could you let us know that? And maybe,
Newport would be getting a letter too asking for money.
I mean,
Yeah,
we're going to
We're
get a
one of
letter.
those towns.
But see, I agree with Bert. This is you're Newport.
Yeah.
And you took on this responsibility. I did a lot of reading about this landfill, and quite frankly, I don't know why you took it on, but you did. Anyway, but,
Because the town wanted
yes,
us
the
to.
town wanted, yeah, no, I read all of that.
Part of the reasoning was we did not want a private entity
That's correct.
to take
Yep,
and perhaps even expand it or.
expand it,
Or
yeah, I
do
read all
something,
that.
do something to create a profit.
So, that, I just want to make sure in your mind, if it is chosen to go out to the town, Econ will facilitate that process. Am I right?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, at this point, I think the consensus here is we would want a firm pay-by date, which is looking like June 30th, and perhaps get some sort of
Memorandum.
memorandum or agreement
I like that.
between Econ and the town
Mhm.
to address that
Good.
and such. And since we're talking about the ash landfill, I can't pass up the moment because I guess I was a representative for the town to several of those trash district meetings, which are, you think Congress is bad, you should have seen those meetings. But at one point, one of our reps, Beverly Rodishin, was a rep at the time in the, I guess, trash district, tasked her with talking with, I guess it was Wheelabrator or whoever was in charge of it, to see about having them send their ash somewhere else. And she sat down with them and she came back with like, yeah, they're gonna stop putting ash in here and send it to Massachusetts instead. And the trash district, being the trash district, got upset with her for reaching an agreement without coming back to him first. It's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But she basically convinced Wheelabrator, I guess it was, to stop putting ash in the landfill here and send it to Massachusetts. And after that, I guess Econ came along and we worked out, the whole closure and all that stuff. So, but it's because Beverly basically brought home the bacon pretty much, and got him to stop putting ash in there.
That was 2001 that it closed, so.
Yeah.
but,
So, all right, anything else on this subject?
So, again, another closure aspect. You're willing then, we'll work out some sort of a memorandum of understanding. It'll be signed by Mark or you or somebody, and that'll be closed with that. Okay?
I'll basically put a firm date on that.
Yeah, I like that idea.
And question, who's paying for the monitoring this year? Is that gonna be tacked onto that, or?
the monitoring's done by Novus.
Right, but it's done every year. I mean, we've been doing this for 3 months or so. By June, it'll be another year worth of monitoring and maintenance out there.
There's monitoring and maintenance, right? The town's been doing the maintenance, and that's been the part of the bill, and I guess, and they've been paying for the monitoring as well. We're going to take care of. We've got a separate bill for the monitoring.
Okay. So at this point, Econ's gonna be billed directly and pay it directly?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we're working out, yeah, that,
Okay.
I think that was brought up, maybe by you, that we're working with somebody different to get a lower cost, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right, we're all set on this? All right, and those Econ board members that came in, and do you wanna, either of you wanna speak, Terry or such, or anyone?
Bruce has done an excellent job.
Okay, well, thanks for coming in and giving him your moral support.
You're welcome.
All right. And Kate, anything?
I do think it's important to remember that Econ was born from this board and that we are all together collectively Newport. And as Newport, we need to work together. I appreciate seeing that. It was very frustrating to sense that there may be some lack of that, or perhaps just lack of understanding of this partnership. And I think it's important to remember if this money has to be paid not from this fund, it's money Newport loses out on. It's money that Econ can't use to support Newport in other ways. So if we can work together to make this work, it means more money for Newport. So it's just like, it's good teamwork.
Yeah, and I know you guys have a strategic plan, and I've glanced at it, but I haven't read it, but I'd love to hear, say, how you would want to invest your capital in Newport going forward? I know at this point you're sort of leery because you don't know if the state's gonna grab it or not, but
Yeah.
it would be nice, you know, how can Econ, say, partner, with the town and the chamber and other entities to,
I think that's stuff that we would all love to do, but is not possible to do until this is dealt with.
Yeah.
So I think it's having reasonableness with each other and understanding of this process and these funds that we want to get to Newport,
Okay.
and then these greater funds that we want to get to Newport.
Yeah.
So it's all good things.
All right. And,
Okay.
ma'am, I forgot your name. Is it Heather or such? Are you
Me?
part of Econ?
My wife.
No,
Oh.
I'm just here for support.
Oh, okay.
She's
All right.
indirectly part
I
of it.
figured
All
that.
right. I'm sorry. It's nice to
Kept
meet
nodding
you.
her head when you were talking.
Any comments, or you wait till you get Bruce home?
No, I think you did an excellent job.
Who drove here, who has a car?
Okay, but thank you for coming in.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate the cooperation.
Anytime, you or Mark or anyone want to come in and talk about what Econ's plans are or such, you're more than welcome. Or-
Always
or
got
let-
a direct link between John, with
Yeah,
John
or
and-
let
and
John
Andre.
know and he can
Yeah.
update us. Okay,
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
all right. Good night.
You too.
Moving on. Avenue, is that the correct way?
Yes, sir.
Avenue Development Group, Jack Frank's presentation on proposed development of property located on North Main Street, map 218, lot 004. All right,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
the members of the board, I'm Bill Belter with SVN, the Mass Yellow Group. I'm here on behalf of Avenue Development.
okay,
We
welcome.
appreciate Hunter accepting our application and putting us on your agenda. As you may know,
Well, we don't accept applications, for
no
development. That's-
application to be on your agenda.
Oh, okay, that one, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
okay.
we understand this is an informal process.
Right, any
I-
sort of, zoning and planning are where you go for, approvals and all that stuff, so.
That is correct.
Yeah.
We understand that. As a fellow selectman in Swansea, I always appreciate it when developers come to us in advance just to give us a sense of what it is that they plan, but it's with the same caveat,
Yeah.
that they need to go through the planning process.
Right, and let me just clarify, as you go forward to zoning and planning on this, I have to say, I am the representative to our zoning board. John, you're the planning board or Herb is the planning board representative. So, whatever you say, you should not say anything that would prejudice us seeing your actual applications there.
No, we
Or if
greatly
you feel,
appreciate that
we should
clarification.
leave the room while you talk to the rest of the board, we can do that. We don't want to prejudice any applications that may come forward to those boards.
We feel at this stage, it's at the very beginning, we're not prepared for
Okay,
a zoning application or site plan approval.
Okay.
by
all right,
any stretch.
just so that's,
Yeah.
you're aware of that.
But we appreciate you and her making us aware of it.
Yeah.
We, as I mentioned, Avenue Development has joined with North Mainland Holdings. The property is map 218, lot 4. It's just beyond your high school on the left-hand side. It's about a 17.7 acre parcel immediately adjacent to the airport on the eastern side. And what Jack would like to do tonight is just review in general terms what we have proposed. This is the type of development that Avenue typically seeks. It's a larger parcel than some others where we focus on workforce housing. This gives us the opportunity to bring in other elements that we think will be a benefit. We had the opportunity to meet on site with Christine Benner and Christina Donovan about a month ago, and we appreciate their input. They didn't give us any real ideas on what to do, but they did encourage mixed-use development, and that's what Jack's going to speak to. If I could say, our experience with your new economic development coordinator has been outstanding. She's a tremendous asset to you. You, Jeff and Herb already know that we've enjoyed the relationship with your planner. She's not easy to work with. She's very diligent, but she's guided us well, and we feel the same way with Christine. So Jack will go ahead and provide you with the scope of our project.
Jack Franks, Avenue Development Group, for the record. Bill didn't leave me much to say. He had pretty much covered everything, just kind of an informal, it's just very, very basic. The 17 acres that we're discussing here tonight is really a gateway, as far as we're concerned, to Newport. It's a beautiful spot. It's there adjacent to the airport, and we're looking at potential of some mixed-use development, things that are thought out well that the community could use, could benefit from, and
Jack, could you define mixed use? When you
mixed use. I think we're battering around the idea of a senior housing facility. As everybody is aware, there's less than 1% vacancy rate. So after we do some more research, we propose and come back to the zoning board for a special exception for a senior housing facility, which would benefit the community in a number of ways. One, for seniors to have a place to downsize and go to, but two, to open up some stock from a real estate purchasing standpoint, meaning families who are looking for homes in the area would be able to find homes. I mean, with close proximity to Dartmouth Medical Center, you've got Ruger here. I mean, there's a lot going on, and I know that the need for housing statewide is overwhelming. So something along those lines potentially that would free up some single-family homes for young families to move into infill, which would be great, I think, for the community. And then possibility, we've been having some discussions with some senior assisted care living facility, which might also benefit the area, benefit the region. And then from the commercial side, just had some conversations with some commercial entities, whether there could be possibility of a supermarket or something. Again, they're going to be well thought out. That's going to benefit the community, and everybody that's in the region would benefit from that. So we haven't gotten that far yet. I mean, basically just wanted to come in and say that we partnered with North Newport Land Holdings in a joint venture, and the properties there, we're spending our time getting it surveyed correctly, getting the elevations done, and I think there's a really great opportunity here for that I-89 corridor. This would be a really nice, well thought out plan and a gateway to Newport. We love Newport. We're doing a project over on Spring Street that's moving forward. We expect to start sometime, hopefully, if funding comes together this coming spring, which will provide 42 units of workforce housing for the area. So, just want to think through it. Just wanted to come in and just let you know that we're here, looking around a little bit. We've got it in-house now, and we're going to be working through to come up with a great idea that will serve the region, serve the community. That's pretty much it.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. Any questions or comments? Anyone in the public? Any questions or comments? How does proximity to the airport impact noise concerns?
There's a huge row of trees here, and the only impact that we would have to really deal with would be considered the side glide slope. And I have a background I'm an aeronautical science guy, so I have a background in aviation and thermodynamics, and the glide slope works. I mean, there's more than enough room. One of the other things that we did think about, which I think would be a huge benefit to the community, would be to possibly, because of the depth of the tree line on the other map, it shows it's about like this, and it comes up around, and it is open up here, but there are some trees along that line as well. Would be to possibly put in a parking area here that could be used by everybody for a walking path, because by the time you walk from here down, and you can put in a dual lane, two basically lanes, one looped around like this, you get almost 2/3 of a mile or close. I haven't calculated it out, but it could be an awesome spot for people to just walk through there, meander through there. We could put in a really nice dog park, dog track, or a walking track for people, and maintain that as part of the property. And things that are going to enhance people's lives. People, it's going to give people an opportunity to get out, exercise a little bit. But we're going to take our time and think through this and come up with some good ideas. And when we have what we feel are good ideas, we'll come to the ZBA and come with a plan and sit down and chat about it and see how it fits in and see if we can make it move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. All right. right, next up, updated community center cost. This one I had put in there. We received a week or so ago updated cost from Breadloaf on what they anticipate the cost of the community center is after 2 years on. Pretty much they came up with an 8% increase in the construction cost, an increase of $421,000, which if we were to build it this in 2022 instead of 2020 would bring the cost of the construction of a new community center to $6,975,000. We haven't spoken to them about this and such, but we have another meeting of those people interested in moving forward with the community center set for the 27th, fourth Monday of this month, which is, yes, the 27th, be in this room at 6:30 p.m. Just looking at this, I mean, I think an increase of just 8%, giving the increase in costs we've seen over the past year or so, is wishful thinking. And I think if we were to go forward with a center and actually get something passed in this coming year, 2022, we'd be looking at construction 2023, maybe 2024. So I would add at least another, say, $500,000 to that for construction cost, realistically another year or two out. You know, John, I don't know what you think, you're in the business, but
I think you're pretty accurate. If their 6.9 million is accurate, I would.
yeah,
We see cost increases in the double digits every day.
Yeah.
Not every other year. It's every day lately.
Yeah.
So.
No. But certainly if we move forward, we'd be bringing them in and talking this a lot more. Because if I remember right, their initial quote, $6.5 million, that was like a not to exceed cost.
That's correct.
So I'm assuming this is how they're looking at this too. So
Yes.
so this is just where we are. And also, they also provided updated costs for renovating the existing rec center. That increased from 2.9 million to 3.1, if I remember right. So a little bit of an increase there too, Stitch. So, any questions, comments on this? All right, Mr. Spalding.
I want to know how the contributions that were put up are withstanding and holding and whatever. And I believe at the last discussion of this, the TM was going to contact and find out. As I said at the last meeting, I'm worried that enthusiasm will be lost, the headwinds are lost, and that bothers me. So if that money evaporated, it ain't gonna happen. But the money is still there. It shows us enthusiasm. If it's increased, that shows even better. But I was not happy with your decision at the last meeting to give the aura of setting it aside because of the school. I didn't buy the rationale, Gail, and I still don't. If you want it, and the community needs it, means we don't need it if we're going to do something else. And that doesn't mean anything except for that question.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we have an accounting of where we stand on the donations as to how much it is?
Hunter?
No, we certainly have an accounting of how much we've collected in terms of pledges and cash. We have not drafted a letter asking people what their position is going to be if the board chooses not to go forward with this, because we're still sort of waiting to see if that's going to be the final decision. But I have a better than gut feeling that you'll lose at least 10% of it right off the bat, because there are some foundations that have made these pledges, and they'll need to recover those funds for tax reasons, if no other reason.
Right, we'd had commitments of pledges and donations and such totaling about 1.7 million, if I remember
That's
right.
correct.
So possibly we could lose maybe up to 200,000.
Yeah,
right
that
off
would be
the
my
top.
guess. There's a couple of cash donations we have that come from these agencies, and I'm sure that they will need to reconcile their own books and recover those funds. They can't have it laying around forever because it doesn't work for their responsibilities.
If you shelve it,
What's that?
if you shelf it, what happens? So, in order to make a real good decision here, I think the board needs to know how much of that money is concrete and how much of it is not. And that will give you direction. If it's there and not moved, and the people know that the can might be kicked down the road, then probably you can kick the can down the road and not lose. But otherwise, without that knowledge, you don't know.
Yeah, and kicking...
You're sitting here talking about increased costs. If this is your donation level here, and here is your cost at that time, this has gone up, and if this has gone down, so we gotta look at it.
Yeah.
You need to know that to make a good decision here.
Personally, I'm in favor of moving forward with it, but if there's no consensus that we can pull it off, which is what I came out of that last meeting of the people interested in moving forward, was that given what the school's doing, they did not see people backing two projects in the same year.
My consensus at the end, before it was stopped, was success. The plans were there. I pulled a rug out from underneath me. We had the words necessary to go forward, and I believe that there would have been sufficient momentum, but the board said no.
You know, it's, my feeling is getting an updated cost figure, which apparently we have, and then doing a marketing campaign, showing people just how, say, old the current rec center is and insufficient, and answering questions people may have, you know, like, well, what happens to the ambulance garage? What happens to the ball field? How does it fit? You know, I felt we could answer those questions, whether it was sufficient to convince people that they should make that investment. And as I said, I think this board, at least on the town side, and Hunter and Paul, you know, we can confidently state that, you know, our town tax rate is level or even decreasing a little bit. So as I think I said once before, we're building in capacity so that we could absorb the additional cost of, say, a bond on this when it comes due in, you know, 2 or 3 years. So that's just my position, but I'm just one board member.
Well, my opinion, you sat in your little coaster at the top of the hill, and it really looked good. And it looked like you would go right down and right up over the next one. I was positive. Many others were also. And then all of a sudden, we don't get pushed off the top. So you're gonna have to rebuild it all over again from scratch, and that's what you just said. You're just gonna start right from scratch with everything that was said before, say it over again, and you start from zero. The only thing that's not going to zero, hopefully, is the donations. And I would take a strong clue from that, where they stand, how much of it you hold on to and how much of it you'll lose. That'll tell you. As I said, this has gone up, this has gone down. Jeff, I don't know how you do it after that, but anyways.
I do remember you saying that when the idea was first proposed, that you didn't have a whole lot of time to sell the idea, because it was put up for vote,
Right, it was,
and I voted no, because I'm like, what do you mean they're gonna build a new rec center? I didn't know anything about it. And I think that was, I'm willing to bet there's a lot of people in this town that felt the same way. So I think if we could make it more of a, the town in general, more aware and sell the idea, I think we'd have a lot more success.
But I believe-
Because I understand a lot more about it now, and I'm kind of leaning towards the favorable side now.
But Keith, I think one vote that you're talking about is not the second round.
No, I'm talking about the first round.
we haven't had a second round of voting yet on this.
Because it was stopped.
Right, when initially
And
due
so
to
he's-
COVID.
The vote he's referring to was the first round.
Right. It was a tight schedule. The committee that worked on the project put in a lot of time and a lot of effort on it, but the product was just not presented in a comprehensive manner. Let me say that, like Keith said, he had questions, he wasn't aware. Perhaps he did not know, just what shape the current rec center is in and what the benefits would be of the new center. The number of kids that would be able to be served, and all this.
It would be good if we had more than, at the next meeting, more than 6 people
Yes,
to express opinions.
yes.
Because it was the firm, I felt, the firm conviction of people there outside of Jeff, that there was not, we didn't look forward to a competition between the town and the school. And that was very obvious. The school is at risk of losing 75% if this vote goes down. They will lose it, okay? So that was the consensus. Now, I've listened to a lot of people talk. Jeff's been very persuasive in terms of his presentation. But I will tell you, there were the majority of the people at that meeting were not in favor of doing it this year, but rather going forward with planning, presenting, getting people aware of what was going on, and then come the next year. My hesitancy right now is, no matter what year we go for it, there's still going to be some competition that will arise.
Yes. And I'll make that really clear. $4.62 a thousand increase was the proposal out of the gate just for the budget for last year.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's what you're up against. Treat yourself as a separate entity, period. Ignore it, because until the finances really get under control, you're dealing with a monster. How many years in a row did they ask for almost or more than $4?
But the CTE Center is not a monster. It services our kids, other kids, and to me, it's the shining star of our school district, is that CTE Center.
I agree. But then if more issues are brought forward and a big ticket goes with it, guess what? The voter makes decisions.
Yeah, and they still might vote.
So they compete with themselves, essentially.
And part of the problem is the CTE Center renovations is on the same warrant as whatever the school budget is.
Yeah.
And also, the school districts everywhere are facing, I guess, less revenue from the state.
Yeah. I mean, they've got to do a good job selling.
Yeah.
Let's face it, the same thing that has to be done with this process. You've got to do a good job. If you look at it, you've got a lot of people that are in this town that are older. What do I need that for? So you've got to work to convince them that there'll be some payback for that process.
And you convince them that it's there for their children and grandchildren too, not just for them, but
Yeah.
it's something that they are leaving for their children.
I don't want to be too negative. I think we have probably the best school administration that we've had in many years. I put 15 as a number to it. So maybe this year, you figured out who was where.
Where I was.
Maybe this year will be different. And if it is, that would be significant in and of itself. But until that happens, I just think you're trying.
I heard what you said.
If you got a big budget, you're gonna be selling ice to an Eskimo.
Yeah, I agree with it. I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
So, if, enough said, I guess.
The people that felt we shouldn't do it this year were also willing to come back 27th of this month.
Yep.
And work toward moving it forward in another year. It's, we can invite additional people to come. I think it's my fault the notices went out too late. A lot of people couldn't make it.
Well, at least you put something out.
Let's try and get people who may be interested out on the 27th. Talk it through, see what the actual consensus would be of a larger group, and, look at it beyond just, the fear of a tax rate. Look at the benefits, and to me, the whole issue of the tax burden is kind of sort of 6 of one, half dozen the other. Even putting it off a year, if you're looking at two 20-year bonds, so they don't overlap 1 year. You're still putting off voting one by 1 year. You're still going to have a school bond and a town bond.
That's what I'm beginning to understand. Yeah.
And you may
We're not
feel,
paying cash for either one.
No.
We're not paying cash for either
No, we're
one.
not.
and I think on the town side, perhaps depending upon how our reevaluation goes, if we're getting reevaluated or whatever the tax rate may be, I think Paul's going to talk to that here at some point. But if the total value of the property in town gets bumped up a little bit because market value has been good, we should then be able to look at a lower tax rate, which will make people feel better, even though they're paying the same amount out of pocket probably. And it can be a marketing tool. And as I said, I think we can safely say that we have no real surprises coming on the town budget and such. Our tax rate, as long as the assessments stay good, should be even or maybe even going down a bit and such. And we can point out that we've been able to, through the work, that Hunter and others have done and Christine have done, we've done an awful lot of infrastructure cost items here off of grants and such, which, and perhaps we also need to take a look at our CIPs so we can say, yes, we've looked at this again, and yes, this is what our cost should be going forward. So we can actually say, yes, we invest this now, and this is what the tax rate should be going out. So what's the consensus? Do we want to keep this open for a possibility for this year, see how things fall out, see what kind of support we may get coming forward?
We need to keep it open here, at least till the next meeting.
Yep.
Hopefully we get the bodies in and get the opinions, and and
I know-
make an informed decision, hopefully.
Yep, I know Christine has mentioned she's had one employer ask about the center and perhaps, and showed an interest in perhaps, donating to it. Perhaps she has others. And it's something I think she may be able to approach others on. So. I will say one group that I do not think was behind the center initially, when it was first came forward, was Econ.
And that's what I was about to say is, as you mentioned the word campaign, and that truly is what would need to happen. I don't know of a person or a group that's active right now, including the wonderful crew at the current rec center, that's ready for a campaign. They're fighting fires all day, every day now, and no one that I know right now would be willing to do a fundraiser of any sort because they're tapped. And that's just the emotion that most people feel right now, is that they're maxed out, the people, through just emotionally over the last couple of years, and to try to dig a little deeper and come up with a campaign right now that's going to cost people a bunch of money and a bunch of effort. That's my only hesitation. I know I don't have any more capacity to join another group and get on another board and have another meeting every week, and really get the word out. So I think for me, and I'm all for it. I mean, my name is on that donation list twice. And I think it's a wonderful thing, but really early on in the process, as in like 6 months ago, should be, this is the group that's going to make this thing happen. And we're going to take, through blessing of one of the bigger donors, that can we earmark some, $20,000 of your money to market this thing? Hire someone to be the campaigner, and I'm just talking out loud, but I just don't see, if we had I love PJ to death, but not all of us know that he's not going to be out banging on doors for the next 6 months saying, hey, we need this thing. Here's a picture of a kid that I had to turn away last week, or they're going to shut my center down next year if we don't do something. That's not going to happen. So if we do what we did last time, and Econ doesn't get a presentation, and the youth sports coaches and the school don't, right up to the last minute, we had municipal employees, department heads openly saying, this is a dumb idea. I don't get a raise, but you're going to build a rec center? That's what killed it. There was internal infighting. There was no even internal campaign, never mind external campaign. So I can't pledge to be a part of that, and I don't know anyone else that can either, other than someone you bring in that says, maybe Christina's doing that, but I think she's already wound out tight enough. So, but at the same time, I think we got to do it. But who? How's it going to get done?
And aren't we in the same time frame we were in before?
Yeah. We know.
No, I think we were into January before we had costs and all that.
But now, when do we go for a vote? When's the vote?
March.
March?
No. We vote in May. Our deliberative session
May.
Session is April.
Yeah. So April, May.
But the thing is,
I think we work. I'm just going to say my piece. I think we work. We keep it alive. We don't create an aura that it's gone. We work to keep it alive. Christine is working on grants that aren't for this year. She's working for grants and working with companies that, when we do put it forth, they're there. All right. So that's my position, and I don't view it as kicking the can down the road. I view it as taking a positive approach to how we work as a town and how we as a group that wants this done, and I'd love to see it done, how we realistically move forward with this, in a realistic manner. And I don't think it's realistic to think, okay, now all of a sudden we're getting whipped up and we're gonna do it again. I didn't see the drive at that. I know it was only 6 people, but it was pretty obvious how they felt about it. So, we need more than 6 people, I do agree. I would like to see that.
So, as you said, we keep it alive, we keep working on moving forward,
Yeah.
and we don't have to make a decision as to whether it's this year or next year yet.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, get the ducks in a row, see how things are panning out.
And, like Bert said, I think a real good indicator is gonna be, someone making a bunch of phone calls and emails, and, hey, we put this thing through next year, you in or out? I mean, that's gonna be a hard phone call for some people. 2 years ago, somebody might have had a bunch of money in the bank, now maybe they don't. Or maybe they have 10 times as much.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there are companies that have actually more money in the bank.
But they may be looking at the
Yeah.
state of the world right now, saying
Yeah.
that money needs to stay in the bank.
Yeah, I
Who the
agree.
heck knows what's
Yeah.
happening?
And
Trying to kind of
earn
keep
that
my name.
1.25% interest.
No, or be a safety net.
Yeah.
John, I agree with everything you said. I just wonder if the phone call or the letter. The phone call might put somebody in a position where they are, like, maybe I shouldn't say no.
Sure.
The letter may allow them to say no, without guilt. So I guess I would say somebody who sits and looks at that list makes a decision. Because it's got to be very important. Fact that this is how much we've had, and it stayed there. We lost very little. And now we're going into another one. The starting point has moved right along with you as you ran. You've got that momentum. If you're losing that momentum, it's going to be awful hard.
Okay.
Maybe it's worth, I don't know, but, as take a look at that list of pledges, and maybe that's an invitation to, the Opera House roundtable of all those folks. And maybe you get more than 6. If, maybe half of them just say, no, thank you. But you might get 5 of them that say, yeah, I'll come talk about that.
Yeah. Good. We have 11
I
people.
mean, that's an invitation list.
Yeah.
And they might, that might be the crew that says, great idea, I'm in, but don't try it this year. I don't want to have my name attached to something that failed again. But now that we have 18 months, I'm in. Let's talk about it.
Mhm.
So the meeting on the 27th is about the rec.
It's rec center. Basically,
So
sort of,
the town needs to show up and
I mean,
voice
some
its
of it,
opinion.
some of it is finding people interested in moving forward. It's also determining who needs to be approached and talked to about it. Like Econ, I would say the various, whoever uses the field down there,
Mhm.
that group, other groups that may use it, people who would be voting on it. Go talk to the senior center, talk to Rotary, talk to the chamber, get the word out, and start having tours through the existing center. I think it's like, get some real statistics. It's like,
It's a good idea.
how many kids were turned away this week because you were at capacity and such?
Yeah, I haven't been inside that building in 30 years.
It looks just as good.
It's gotten a lot nicer.
One more, Jeff.
Yes.
Then why not divide it into 2 steps? Step number 1 is we're going to raise money. We're not going to do it this year because of the school, but next year we're going to do it. So this year, where our goal is to take the what you have and make it $2.5 million.
Actually, 3. Need at least
Need
3.
Okay, I don't care what you say, make it that way. I'm just saying, the idea is that here, if you say, no, we're gonna skip this and go here, you're gonna lose enthusiasm. So right here, if you have a campaign just to raise money, and start off from where you are, where you know you are, and go for the money, you might be surprised. Because the people with money might not be the people without money. Think about that. So,
I don't want to think about that too hard.
well, the people with money might have a different opinion than the people without money, right? Now you're going out and ask everybody. So concentrate on just the fundraising.
I think that's good to do. Yeah.
Step 1. And that means you're still alive.
Okay. We'll keep this alive, because it is a critical need for the community.
I know the ambulance will come and resuscitate. Go for it. There is very little that is gotten by people who don't have a purpose of going to do.
Also, in conjunction with keeping this alive, and I mentioned it, and I think Barry wants to take lead on this, is getting our CIP.
CIP, right.
So,
And making it more of a town expansive process, getting the school involved.
we have to update the work that
Good to know.
is on the town side, and then
Yeah.
basically we need to get the school involved.
I think we have a good start. I mean, what you presented before is a good start. We need to update it again, kind of look at it, and then we need to bring people together to talk about a town-wide
Yeah.
CIP.
Maybe the school board will appoint Bert as their representative too.
Well, they're interested. They'll, what's the chair's name?
Jenna,
Jenna? She's willing to come.
Yeah. well, she's been to our meetings a few times.
Yeah, she has.
Okay. All right, also a reminder, we agreed at our retreat that we'll be picking up the second half of that table at our next meeting. That'll be
Oh, good.
part of our next
Say
meeting.
tonight.
You didn't bring it, did you?
I was
going No.
to and I forgot it.
Not tonight, and that's why we'll try to
That's
keep
good.
next meeting not too busy. Moving up, item D, year-end fund balance.
Paul's has completed his analysis of the year-end expenditures, and we're going to give you a quick overview
Okay.
in preparation of asking you to authorize the setting of the tax rate.
Thank you, Paul.
Before anybody should panic, you should know that it's going to land right where we predicted it would.
So let me start by saying, in front of, or between Jeff and John, you'll see the MS 535, which is the annual report for the year. And one of the documents that we need to have submitted for, to get a tax rate.
Is that due by September 1st or something?
The date on it is September 1st. I don't know that I've ever filed it by then. And there is no penalty with the state if it's not filed by September 1st. But, so if the board wouldn't mind signing that before you go out tonight, that would be wonderful. The results of that report, on page 6, I think, the balance sheet, where we will end the year with a fund balance, this is before audit, $2,343,739. Yeah, 739. But then, which seems like a very big number, but breaking down those components, you've got non-spendable portion of fund balance, which is prepaid expense. My apology, as I was sitting here, I realized I had the typo, so I fixed it while I sat here. And then tax deeded property for a total of $380,000. That's funds that have been put out, but will not be immediately recognizable for use as fund balance. The next thing that we will have is 2 items that were committed at town meeting, $173,800 to use towards the Sand Hill Bridge project of fund balance, and $100,000 towards the Embargus Mill project for fund balance.
And that 100,000 was based upon getting grant for the other.
Correct.
That's correct.
And that will not be expended without the match, right?
That's correct.
So So that'll just sit there and can be used in a future year because it's already been approved this year.
Correct.
Okay.
And then finally, assigned fund balance, which is formerly called reserve for encumbrances or continuing appropriations. We've got about $140,000 worth of outstanding purchase orders from May and June, as well as a sidewalk contract. We have continuing projects, which were things like the audit, which is still, the last year's audit, which is still undergoing, we haven't been billed for yet. We have $55,000 from the appropriation for the rec facility, the study for the rec facility, so those monies are in there. So it's monies that have been set aside in previous years, but have not been fully expended yet. And then finally, there were some alternate projects that I know Hunter has talked to the board about, which leaves an assigned fund balance of $554,771.
Now, under the alternative project, that includes the funds we approved for the roofing?
That's roofing this building and
Okay.
the district court.
Okay.
That is roofing the Corbin Bridge. There's money in there for, if we needed additional funds for the dispatch center upgrade. Improvement to the fuel system, or correction of the fuel system out back for our last inspection.
Okay.
So those are some of the items that are in there. Leaving an unassigned fund balance of $1,134,774. That would probably put you, if you remember, DRA has a recommended percentage of appropriations that you want to keep that's between 5, well, there's two different, one, the state has between 5 and 15%, and the GFOA, the Government Finance Association, has 8% to 15%. So that is probably going to put you at about, the $1,000,001 is probably going to put you at about 8 to 9%. But then I will also remind you that we have some potential exposures in town through lawsuits that are at about $1,200,000 right now.
How much do we have currently in fund balance? Do we have anything?
That's
That's
fund
the
balance
whole
as of
thing.
June 30.
Okay, that's the whole thing.
Yes.
Okay. So your recommendation would be to leave that 1.134 million in fund balance pending outcomes of the new London Hospital case.
How many years has it been?
How many
4.
years? The new London case?
Beginning of the problem to where we are now, it's 4 years, isn't it?
We've got 5 years with one thrown out. One in the middle thrown out.
One in the middle.
Judges work in mysterious ways. So the potential loss, the potential impact if it's found that the health center is 100% charitable, organization would be,
Today is $1,203,000.
is that they've been paying based upon 100% tax rate, which means they paid us 1.2 million. Okay. And so if it gets settled 100% in their favor, we'd owe them that all back plus interest.
That actually includes the 6% statutory interest.
With interest. Okay.
That 102 includes that.
$1,200,000.
$1,000,002, yeah.
Yes.
Excuse me.
It does.
Yeah.
I'm worried about all this, so.
And if it goes 100% in our favor, we get to keep all of that. But realistically, the expectation and common sense solution would expect some sort of pilot where it splits down the middle, where we basically they end up being able to keep about half of it and would give half of it back. In a more perfect world, perhaps. But in any case, realistically, if the settlement goes 100% in our favor, we'd be fools not to realize that they'd probably appeal it the next day and would continue on as we are.
That's correct.
And the chances are, if it goes 100% in their favor, we would have to seriously consider appealing it. And I think at that point, we would start looking for partners to join us, because as this domino falls, just about every other hospital and health center in the state would start looking at a similar settlement.
Potentially.
What's the pleasure of the board?
What's the question? Tell me the question.
Fund balance, should we spend it or keep it in the
Oh,
bank?
okay, thank you. No, I think we.
Or somewhere in
Paul's
between?
advice.
And just the other thing is, with the exception of the two specific votes from fund balance, not using any fund balance will still result in a tax rate that's about where we projected for coming out of the meeting, which was down
10 cents. All right,
So overall, it's been a good year. We've been able to increase the fund balance, keep the tax rate under control, and get plenty done.
you guys have shown good financial prudence, or whatever the correct term is.
That works.
Plus you've been grabbing every grant that comes by and using that for other costs.
Yep, about 2.8 million the last 12, 13 months, 2 million the year before that.
Mhm.
The federal government has been very
Cooperative, yeah.
Okay, do you need any formal vote from us, or
nothing beyond the signatures on it,
do we need to sign this?
if you would.
And what's the bottom line? Basically says what you showed here?
The fund balance will be what shows there. The first two pages are, first three pages are expenses, followed by 2 pages of revenues.
Okay.
Revenues were in excess of budget, expenditures were well below budget.
So what is the tax rate you anticipate, more or less? What did we estimate for a tax rate back
Came
last
out of
spring?
town meeting at 1202,
Okay, down from 1212?
I think so. I've been focusing on cold numbers, not the numbers, so that will be next.
All right.
So I'm sorry, my hearing's bad. What was the number that you didn't say?
1202.
Okay, so that's just zero, right? To the layperson.
Yeah.
Not an increase.
Not an increase, slight
Right.
decrease.
So what do you see from other entities so far?
I haven't seen anything yet. I've had calls into the county and the state on accounting rates.
Isn't the state school rate going down like a nickel or something?
It could be. I'm sorry, I've been focusing on.
Which means they just gotta raise the local one by a nickel.
Exactly.
All right, I'll let you off the hook, Paul. You know, it's, I don't want to distract you from doing your job and put you into other places. That's like asking you to fix it in a swamp.
All right, anything else on this? All right, moving on. Action items, adoption of updated personnel plan. Okay, Hunter?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we made the adjustments, the few adjustments you all suggested from your last meeting, and the format that you see should reflect that.
Yep.
And there's really no material changes in this. In other words, we haven't changed the condition or terms of employment. We've just updated things to reflect policies that you've adopted over the last year to incorporate them into the formal policy. So it's just a more true representation as to what you've done over the last year.
Right, and you pretty much took out the whole cyber policy.
Yeah, so cyber policy really isn't a personnel policy, so to speak. It's an operating policy. We have a number of those that exist elsewhere, and it's the kind of thing that changes on a regular basis, so it would really be difficult for the board to have to meet every few months because we've changed something in the policy, or we changed the company we're working with or something like that to update that. But we are having a discussion with Primex. We were going to have it today, but so I suspect we'll have it tomorrow to go over that final format. You'll see that again after we get that ironed out.
Anyone have any questions or comments or concerns about the personnel policy? That all look good?
I thought it looked pretty good.
There wasn't much for change in there other than what you just talked about.
I haven't read the whole thing cover to cover. Skimmed over it.
Just look for red.
Yeah.
All right, anyone want to make a formal motion to adopt it as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? All right. Moving on. Adoption of incident response plan and computer use policies. Okay. And this we also received. You wanna, anything here? This is basically,
This is an updated operational type of policy that Primex is recommending that we adopt.
okay. And is this their policy or is this ours based upon their recommendation?
It is, well, I would say it has its genesis in their policy, but we've adopted it for our circumstance.
Okay,
So I would say it's largely born out of their form or general policy.
okay.
Plagiarized.
Yeah, plagiarism is the greatest form of
Okay.
flattery.
I mean, we didn't reinvent the wheel.
And there wasn't anything that stuck out like, that's weird, or anything?
Their initial policy had some reference to some federal cyber policies that
Mhm.
we couldn't read if we wanted to. So those were eliminated. It was more in reference than it was actually in policy or
So-
action.
Right, so as I said, we've kind of adopted it for
Okay.
our environment.
Is there a motion on this?
So move. Move to accept. However you want me to say it.
Any discussion, questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? All right. Is there anything else to come before us tonight? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Well, this is black. I did pick up black ink one tonight. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all. See you all in 2 weeks.
So we need to sign something, Jeffrey?
We better know if you need to sign.